Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. I don't know about you, but I find the idea of having a hobby a bit strange. There are some people who like to whack a little white ball around a field 18 times and then go and stand in a clubhouse and chat with other Freemasons about birdies and bogeys and eagles. Then there are those people who like to sit on foldable, collapsible chairs by the side of a canal in waterproofs in the rain, hoping to catch a fish, just so they can throw it back again. I've heard that some people even like to go jogging. It's all a bit weird, isn't it? I mean, I'm guilty of this too, only my hobby's even weirder. You see, I like to spend all of my spare time on Auto Trader, looking at cars that I could buy, but never do. I don't know if this is normal or not. One of the cars I find myself looking most at, but never actually buy, until today of course, is the Mercedes CL. For some reason the CL fascinates me. This is a car that started out life at over £100,000, and you can pick up good used examples for under 10. I just can't work out why they're so cheap, because on the face of it, it seems like the perfect car. A big, fast, powerful, luxurious continent crosser. They come with loads of gadgets as standard. The smallest engine you can buy is a big V8, and they're as luxurious as an oligarch's living room. So why are they so cheap? I know that all cars depreciate, and luxury cars are the worst offenders, but these CLs don't just depreciate, they plummet, like an elephant falling out of a plane. It just doesn't make sense to me. Let me give you a bit of background. Mercedes have been making this kind of car for decades. It's basically a two-door S-Class, bought by people who want to drive themselves rather than be chauffeured. It used to be called the SEC, then in 1992 Mercedes decided to change the name to the CL, which stands for Coupe Light, which is possibly the most ridiculous name ever because the last thing this car is light. It weighs nearly 2 tons. The first generation, known as the C140, ran from 92 until 99. That was then replaced with the second generation, which ran from 99 to 2006. That was known as the C216. This third generation, known as the C216, ran from 2006 until 2014. After that, Mercedes decided to lay to rest the CL name, presumably before somebody sued them under the Trade Description Act, and they call the newest models the S-Class Coupe. They also did a convertible version, which is absolutely gorgeous. I recently bought this 2007 CL500 from a viewer, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's only done 24,000 miles, and it drives like a dream. Under the bonnet is a 5.5 litre V8, which produces 382 horsepower. Its top speed is limited to 155 miles an hour, and 0 to 60 takes just over 5 seconds. It feels properly quick, this. Although, of course, that's not what it's built for. But let me just demonstrate. Going on a bit of a straight now, so floor it. And then before you know it, yeah. That's a license losing speed, that. It's built more for comfort than speed, but it's nice to know it's there when you need it. Somewhat unbelievably, the CL500 is the base model, which is a bit like McDonald's smallest offering being the Big Mac. You can't buy the CL with a V6 or with a diesel, thankfully. There were other options available. You could have bought the CL600 with a V12, or the CL63 AMG, or if your father is an Emir or a Sultan, you could have bought the CL65 AMG, with a twin turbocharged V12. Hardly anybody did though. Those models are as rare as rocking horse droppings. If I were you, I would go for either the 500 or the 600 and avoid those AMG models because in my opinion they're just a little bit too shouty, too brash. They're loud and aggressive and it just isn't what the CL's about. For a calming long distance cruiser, the 500 or 600 just suit the car best. Styling wise, I think it's lovely. It's as elegant now as it was 13 years ago when it left the factory. There's no B-pillar, so you end up with a very svelte, timeless shape. They do sit better with the AMG kit on, which was an optional extra when it was new. So you can go for a non-AMG car with the AMG looks. They just have so much presence. When you pull up in a CL, people take notice. From a distance, you'd think this was the same size as any other coupe, you know, a 6 Series or a CLK. It's only when you get close to it do you realise the enormity of it. It's massive. It's just over 5 metres long, this car, which, to put it into context, that's just over a foot longer than Volvo's cavernous V70. Speaking of cavernous, the boot on the CL is almost 500 litres, which is the same sort of size you'd get in an S-Class or an Audi A8. Although this is a two-door coupe, you do get 2 proper-sized rear seats, and unlike most two-door coupes, there's quite a bit of space back there. Most rear seats in most 2+2 coupes are only really comfortable if your passengers don't have legs. But the CL is an exception. You'll be able to carry 2 adults back there, even if they have a full-size head. Being inside a Mercedes CL is a bit like being in a first-class carriage. It's sumptuous. The leather is deep and rich and thick. It'll make you wonder why you didn't buy one years ago. Of course, the windows are double glazed and it's so incredibly well insulated that it's as quiet as an empty classroom. From the moment you get into a CL, you're just instantly relaxed. It's not so much a car this as a teleportation device. You're immediately transported to your own little world where there's no stress and you're wealthy, successful, healthy, and nothing's an issue. You drive along in your own little bubble of tranquility and opulence. Frequently the only thing you can hear in here is the clock ticking. Happily, when you're being held up by some sour-faced peasant in a Peugeot, you just need to gently tap the accelerator and you're away. They become a distant memory. The CL is everything a Mercedes should be. I always say this to people, but you've never truly experienced a Mercedes, or a BMW for that matter, until you've driven a high-spec model with a big engine. The little A-Class with the engine from a Renault, cloth seats and a manual gearbox isn't a proper Mercedes. I'm pretty sure that wasn't Carl Benz's idea of the motor car. This was. In terms of technology, this car's from 2007, so there's no Bluetooth media streaming or Apple CarPlay, obviously. But there are a load of other features which will keep you occupied. For example, this one has something called Night View Assist, which is possibly the coolest feature ever fitted to a car. It has an infrared camera fitted to the front, which then sends that image to this display here. So when it goes dark, at the touch of a button, all the gauges disappear, and instead you get a night vision camera. It sounds like a gimmick. It is a gimmick, but it does work. I've used it on these country roads when I've been driving at night, and you can see animals that you wouldn't see through the windscreen. On top of that, you've got heated seats, which will also give you a massage. You've got radar cruise control, which will automatically slow the car down if the car in front of you is French. You get soft closed doors, so you won't alert anyone's attention when you get home a little late. You also get this phone keypad here under this leather pad. The whole car just feels like it was designed for James Bond. It's riddled with gadgets. You also get plenty of storage compartments, some in the door cards, the glove compartments are reasonable size, some more storage under there. You get 2 cup holders in case you were wondering. It all feels very upmarket, apart from a couple of things which I've got to point out, even though it is serious hair splitting. The first one is the glove compartment. Now when you open it, it drops down with such force and speed and severity that it'll take you by surprise. That's obviously not a deal breaker, but it is a little bit crude. You'd expect it to lower gracefully, rather than just dropping crassly. The other issue are the steering wheel buttons, which like all Mercedes from this era, are sticky. It just spoils the feel of an otherwise excellent quality car. The good thing is, rather than adjusting the volume from this sticky button, you can just use this scrolling wheel here. I do love the steering on this car. It's so light and effortless, and it turns on a sixpence. I also love the wooden steering wheel, but I'm sure there's a medical term for that. It just feels so much more luxurious than one made from dead cow. In terms of what it's like to drive, it's one of the most comfortable cars I've ever driven. It's about as stressful as taking a bath. As I mentioned earlier, it's also very fast in a straight line. But you might be wondering how it fares with corners. Well, it does wallow a little bit. It's not a 911 or a Lotus Elise. That said though, it's never scary. It never feels as though you're going to lose it. They do offer the CL with all-wheel drive, although this one isn't. This is just rear-wheel drive. Not that this will come as any surprise, but this isn't the kind of car that you'd ever take on a track. Instead, the CL's #1 job is to isolate the wealthy owner from the stresses of the real world. And it does that job remarkably well. Let's move on to running costs. Now this is one subject that always gets my back up because you get silly comments from people. Or when I say people, I mean people who drive Zara Picassos and such. They always say things like, well, if you can't afford a brand new Mercedes, then you certainly can't afford a 10-year-old one. That's just nonsense, it's drivel. Having said that, the running costs are higher than a Ford Focus or a Toyota Aygo, obviously. You can't drive around in a £100,000 Mercedes that you can now buy for 90% less and expect 70 miles per gallon, £30 a year annual road tax, and the reliability of a Japanese train timetable. That's just unreasonable. You can't have it always, but I would ignore those people in the sandals and the reactor glasses. Let them stick to their silly Citroens. All they're trying to do is spoil your fun. Anyway, let's talk figures. The road tax here in the UK is in the highest bracket of £600 a year, but happily it's ULEZ compliant, which means you can drive this into Birmingham or London, and you won't be charged. Fuel-wise, while you're pottering around town, you'll do 15 or 16 miles per gallon, and on a motorway run you'll do 28 or 29, which isn't great. It's not like a Prius or a diesel Lupo, but I do think it's a price worth paying. Reliability-wise, it's a big complicated car this, so it will throw up the odd large bill. That, unfortunately, is to be expected. Servicing your CL shouldn't cost the earth. This one, for example, is booked in with SPR in Stockport, who are a Mercedes specialist. Now, it's due a B service. Now, they've quoted around £300 for that. I'm also going to have the gearbox serviced because it's 13 years old and I suspect it's on its original fluid. Now, that's going to cost around £200. So I don't think those costs are prohibitive. My advice, as always, with any kind of luxury car like this, is set aside a couple of grand, stick it to one side in a separate bank account and just treat it as a bit of a rainy day fund. That way when something breaks, and it probably will because it's a complicated car, you'll have some money tucked aside there so you won't be caught short. What I would suggest is find yourself a good Mercedes specialist and just stick with them, let them look after the car. Run it on premium fuel, treat it with a bit of respect, don't drive it like you're 11. Try and keep it garaged, or at least undercover, so it's not out in all elements. When something breaks, fix it, even if it's minor or trivial, so that you don't get a long list of faults. If you're not planning to use it every day, then I'd recommend that you buy a trickle charger, something like a C-Tech charger. That way it'll keep the battery in tip-top condition. And yeah, you should be alright. Another thing, don't buy the cheapest. I know if you have a look on Autotrader, you'll find some of these at probably $7,995, $8,995, but you might just be buying a basket case. So it's probably best to avoid those. I'd only recommend that you buy one with proper service history as well, either Mercedes or Mercedes specialist. And this next tip, I know this might sound a little bit obvious, but try and buy one that's been loved. That way you should be able to have a relatively trouble-free experience, and you can drive around with that smug grin on your face, knowing that you're in the best Mercedes money could buy, for the same price as your neighbour's Santa Fe. In all honesty though, I don't know who would have bought one of these cars brand new. Who would have spent £100,000 and not had a Bentley or Aston Martin badge? It just makes no sense. So as a new buy, no, I would steer clear. But as a used buy, they don't come any better than the Mercedes CL. In the words of James Garner, at least once in your lifetime, you owe yourself a car like this. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. If you're interested in getting into the used car business, I've created an online platform with nearly 100 videos which explain every single aspect of the motor trade. How to start, how to get funding, where to source cars from, how to prepare them for sale, after sales, it's all there, so do check it out. Also, if you're wondering where you can buy some high-peak merch to help support the channel, then check out my online store, www.highpeakstore.co.uk. Cheers guys, I'll see you next time.